Hello everyone, and yeah, welcome back to TSW2. In all honesty, it feels a little weird doing one of these basic gameplay videos after what feels like a long time. But because I've got some other things to work on today, I hope, I'll just be doing a relatively short run this time around. And if I can get this thing set up quickly enough. Yeah, we're currently on the sorry, I'll screw that up. Excuse me. We're currently at Rainham on the Southeastern High Speed route. And this is our train. It's the Class 465, or more specifically 465/9, which are former 465/2 units that were refurbished with this somewhat half-assed first class section. And yeah, this is of course, well, I should add that the 465 doesn't come with the SEHS route and is sold separately because reasons. Personally, I would have rather had the 465 included with the route alongside the 395 and 375. And just for the sake of variation, I set the weather to light rain. Okay, just waiting for that yellow circle to go round because then I'll close the doors. That I don't know about you, but that door buzzer is much louder than, well, to me it seems very loud. Regen brake on. Because what happens when you've got the regenerative braking on is that when you are applying the brakes to obviously to slow down and stop at a station, you'll hear that classic networker motor sound, but in reverse, which I always liked. Well, that's one of the things I like about the networkers, is that incredibly unique motor noise. Although saying that, you don't hear it on all the 465s. Come to think of it, I don't think you ever did hear it on all the 465s. Because there was originally the 465/2s built by Metro Camel, and I believe there was also, but before that I think there was the 465/0 and /1, which those units didn't they have like brush motors? I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure they did sound rather different compared to the motors on the Metcam units. I'm just going to take the number of the rear unit, which is 465902. And yeah, if anyone else or if you are semi-familiar with the 465s like me, you'll probably know that in more recent times, the /0 and /1 units, which I think were built by Braille and ABB, they were refurbished to now have Hitachi motors. So apparently they've got the nickname Javworker because they sound a lot like the Class 395 Javelins now. I think they'll probably just okay, I don't know how that's possible. I don't know how that door could still be unlocked when the train is moving. Because I know that there are a few other trains, even in this game, where you can't open that cab side door when you're moving. Technically the London Underground 1972 stock falls into that category, except the 72 stock doesn't have the cab side doors. The only way you can get in the cab of that train is by either going through the door in the front or opening one of the passenger doors and walking in from there. So I remember on the train simulator version of this London to Faversham route, when you were driving along the section between Gravesend and Gillingham, if you looked over towards that direction, you would see like a very basic 2D rendition of, I think, one of the, I think there was seaside attractions at Southend-on-Sea, which I thought was quite impressive, considering that until then I didn't realise just how close this area is to Southend-on-Sea. I think it's on the other side of the Thames. Well, at this point it'll basically be the Thames estuary. Of course, I mainly know Southend for being the terminus of the line of a branch off of Sheenfield that goes to Southend Victoria, and of course the Southend Pier Railway. And okay, coming into Gillingham with 375s on one platform and one of my awful custom liveries on the other. That was a admittedly piss poor attempt to do like a blue and grey, British Rail livery for the 375. And speaking of which, like the whole custom liveries thing, I have of course seen recently that Dovetail brought out this strange Creators Club, although I'm not sure why they keep calling it a Creators Club Beta, unless it is meant to be in the initial testing phase. But I mean, it's certainly good that we've finally got a means of, well, like an easy way to share and download other people's reskins. But at the same time, I still think there should be an option, or certainly an obvious option, where you can choose whether or not, or it would actually let you choose whether or not a custom livery will spawn in for timetable mode. So they certainly don't spawn in custom liveries in scenarios. And yeah, what I'm saying is it should be the same thing for timetable mode. Here comes another pair of 465s. This first one is quite clearly in the normal Southeastern livery, but there's another one of the awful custom liveries, and I think that's West. Sorry, this red one is I think that's the West Yorkshire PTE livery, which I think from memory I based that on some of those older slam door EMUs that used to run commuter services around Leeds. So primarily like the Class 307. Because these days I think if you go to see EMUs in Leeds, you'll probably just get like the class, well, like if you for the commuter services, you'd probably just get like the Class 322s and 331s. Although saying that, I don't know whether or not the 322s are in service anymore. Speaking of which, the 322, I remember that when I was in Melbourne, Australia in 2013, whenever I saw, I think they're called Siemens Nexus EMUs, I remember saying at the time that I thought they looked like the Class 322s. Only now, more recently, I've realised that I was dead wrong. That the Siemens Nexus looks nothing like the Class 322s. Obviously, don't need the windscreen wipers on when we're going through a tunnel. Yeah, it looks. I don't know about you, but I can just about see what looks like another train in the distance. Unless that's just my eyes playing tricks on me. Wouldn't be the first time. And of course the next station that we'll be calling at is Chatham, which is, if I'm not mistaken, that's where Dovetail Games themselves have stated that they have their headquarters. And of course it's also the site of some very old dockyards, although I don't know if they're in service anymore. But I know that there's some sort of a heritage railway operation that's based there, or some kind of demonstration railway line in the old dockyards where they have some preserved diesels. And I think one of them even looks like, from memory, one of them looked a bit like a Class 01. Hello, there's the Class 395. Just one of the regular units, so it's obviously not 395012. And of course, if you don't know why 395012 is so special, well, it's distinctively different from the other 395s. It's because that's the unit that's got the rainbow decals on each side of the driving coaches. It's one of those so-called trainbow things, kind of like I think the Class 700, number 700-155, and Class 444, number 444019. That's something else I just realised I'm initially forgetting to do, is put the wipers on as we come out the tunnel. This whole section of the Chatham main line between Rochester and Rainham I've always found strange, because it's very, very slow going, and I think pretty much every passenger train passing through here, or certainly every regular passenger train passing through, stops at all stations between and including Rochester and Rainham. Excuse me. And I think that's a little odd in some ways, but then again, it's such a slow section of the routes that you can't really have anywhere where you can get the fast trains overtaking the slower ones. And incidentally, the next station down from Rainham, which is Newington, is one where the platforms are on loops, essentially. It's a bit like Totnes, where you can have a slower train stopped in the platform, and then obviously you can have a faster train overtaking it. There's a couple of stations on the Caltrain route that are set up like that. Just realised that I don't think I've mentioned it so far, but for this run with the Class 465, we'll just be going as far as Gravesend on a service that is meant to be, well, that is heading for, as you can see there, London Charing Cross. And from what I understand, in real life, Southeastern doesn't actually run a Charing Cross to Rainham service anymore. And I think it only goes as far as Gravesend. So I think the local service to Rainham is now run by Thameslink. So in real life, I don't know exactly what year the Southeastern High Speed route is set in, or certainly what year the timetable is set in. But I'm guessing, well, it's obviously a bit out of date, given that, as I said, the Class 700s now run on this line. Speaking of which, I remember not that long ago, Dovetail Games brought out the Class 700 for Train Simulator, and suffice to say, it was awful. I mean, decent modelling, but as per usual, atrocious sounds and physics. Although saying that, Armstrong Powerhouse are working on an enhancement pack for the Desirous Cities, and they said, well, the title of it gives me the impression that they'll be including not just an updated 700, but also the 707 and 717. And good luck trying to get a good and accurate rendition of the 717, because that has a very, very different front end compared to the 700 and 707. Anyway, this is Rochester, and those platforms we just went through, that was the old Rochester station. Incidentally, the other day I was watching a video from, I think it was Tom Scott, where he was talking about Rochester and how it technically isn't a city and can't, due to some strange legal thing, or legal rule or whatever it was, Rochester technically can't apply for city status anymore. It's just really strange, to say the least. And of course that's coming from someone that knows almost nothing about British law. And I'm trying to get the stopping point exactly right here, and we did it. And it's Medway. Oh, that's a point, because we're in these. I think this part of England is technically called the Medway Towns, and just down the way there is a bridge across the River Medway.
The 16:25 service to Gillingham is delayed by approximately 14 minutes. This is due to a failure.
I don't know what that failure was about, but I don't know why it's talking about a train going through here at 16:25 when obviously it's nowhere near that time in the game, at least. Let's have a quick look through the interior while we still can. Seems to me like a very dated interior on these trains. Mind you, this wouldn't even be their original condition. I must say, I'm not sure what to make of the 3x2 seating layout. I think what I'm used to is just 2x2. Come to think of it, I'm pretty sure the particular variants of the 375s that Dovetail included with this route, that's a variant that's got 3x2 seating. I seem to recall seeing 3x2 seating on the EMUs in Melbourne. But yeah, I think 2x2 is a much better way to go about it. Well, they're saying that. When I was in Auckland recently, I went on these, like the AM electric units, and rebuilt Mark IIs on Te Huia, and even then, the central aisles, especially on Te Huia's coaches, felt very, very narrow. Anyway, I probably should stop blabbering about that dodgy aisleways. Let's see how much of this Medway crossing we can actually see, even though this, I know what this camera will do, it'll glitch through, and yep, I really do hate this thing with the camera. It's perhaps one of the most annoying aspects of TSW is that camera, and how it doesn't, or how it'll, if you try to get a shot of, if you try to put it around the other side of a wall, it'll like glitch in and you get a very cramped view of the side of the train, if that makes any sense, and it is rather annoying. But it's certainly not a game-breaking glitch. Although saying that, I think I have found at least one of them with the Arosa line, of course. And although saying that, last night I tried driving the Ice 3 on the München to Augsburg line, and several times over I tried picking surfaces out of München, but for whatever reason it kept getting buggered by glitched red signals. Like, you press tab to clear them. By the way, this is a class 66. You press tab to clear the signals, and it'll say denied, wait for signals to change, even though the signals, if you go on the 2D map, you'll see that the signals in front are all green, and there's no other trains coming in the opposite direction to potentially obstruct your path. And that happens on the Arosa line as well, specifically at Lewin Castile. Anyway, I just thought to mention that those Mendip rail logos on those JNA wagons, it's not a standard feature. I did have to install a texture patch to get that to display a realistic logo. I think that would have been the 66 and wagons that came with the East Coastway route. Actually, come to think of it, if I can, I'll try to get a screenshot of that 66. Oh, it's going down the Medway Valley Line. Wasn't expecting that. Oh, that's really nice. Really typical that the camera won't. There's that invisible wall just where you don't need it. Although saying that, speaking of the Medway Valley Line, I remember that that's another route that we've got in Train Simulator, and Dovetail brought that out as a branch of the, it was an extension of the existing Chatham mainline route, and from memory it wasn't too bad. I mean, it's certainly a good route for someone who likes driving third rail EMUs but doesn't really want the busyness, or I guess even hassle, of grinding through London, especially for scenario makers. Especially, it's certainly a lot easier. Right, now as we depart Strood, there'll be what feels to me like a relatively long section where the speed limit's only 15 miles an hour. And essentially this means that we've got no chance of getting to Higham station on time. Even though this thing can accelerate relatively quickly, we'll soon be able to get up to 70 miles an hour. Incidentally, the top speed of the 465 is 75 miles an hour. Although, as you can just about, you might just be able to see it, the speedometer there, that's saying it goes up to 90 miles an hour. So another thing I don't like about the section between Strood and Higham, besides the long crawl at 15, is the fact that it's mostly in tunnels. If anything, it's basically like the section between West St Leonard's and Hastings. If you know that section, you'll know what I mean. I must say that this Class 465 is definitely one of the better add-ons we've got in TSW, ranging just from the overall detail of the sounds and how it performs, and it's the fact that it certainly makes for a good addition to the Southeastern High Speed route. But as I alluded to earlier, I do wish it was included with the route itself. But as long as you can get it as long as you can get this add-on for a decent price, it's not really that much of a problem in the grand scheme of things. Although speaking of new TSW add-ons, or upcoming ones rather, I remember seeing that Rivet Games has unveiled well, not necessarily unveiled, but they've announced another Swiss route, which, I mean, it's the usual case of looks really, really nice, as that is what they want you to think, but the problem that I've found with that route already is that it is, or at least what I've seen what I saw on Google Images, well, not Google Images, Google Maps is anything to go by. This route that Rivet Games has chosen to do is far too short, and I think it's only like 24 miles, and it goes without saying that something like that is just, it's almost insultingly short, if I'm being honest. And the fact that it's being made by a developer that I've got a lot of, well, that I've got a, I would say, grudge, but a developer that I have a lot of, against which I have a lot of reservations, if you will. And yeah, that doesn't help. And I certainly want, I mean, again, it is another Swiss route, and obviously it's good to get more variety in terms of the countries that are featured in this game, but I'm sorry, you cannot convince me to think that Lucerne, I think it was Lucerne to Surzy, is a route worth buying when it's so short. As I said, it's not even 30 miles. If anything, that's probably just about as underwhelming as Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr or Duisburg to Bochum. But even then, that's a route that I do drive on a semi-frequent basis, for the simple reason that most of the time I don't really know what else to. Sometimes I don't really know what else to drive on. Anyway, this is of course Rainham station, where we're passing a Class 375. Destination display on that thing says it's going to Rainham. And this is of course our last intermediate stop before we get to Gravesend. And just thinking back to that whole, well, not really fiasco, but that disappointing Rivet Games announcement, it's not like, if what Dovetail has given the impression, if what Dovetail has indicated with this American route they're working on, it's another one that is far too short and needs to be a lot longer. That's the Metro North Harlem line, which I'll probably still get for the simple reason that I still like US commuter trains, and there just isn't enough of them in the game. Even though the motive power that'll be included with that route will be very, very similar, if not identical, to what we've already got with the Long Island Railroad. I do apologise for this awkward silence, but if anything, I've run out of ideas to talk about, at least ones I can think of off the top of my head. If I'm being honest, I had a bit of a hard time trying to decide what route and train to revisit for this video. I was initially considering a German route until I remembered that whilst I think the vast majority of my TSW collection is actually German stuff, I've noticed that the gameplay videos of the German routes generally don't do very well in terms of view counts, which in my honest opinion is frankly insulting and underwhelming. And in the past, when I've covered the 465, that's generally done a lot better. And of course, as we pass Who Junction, there's the usual stationary 66s. I dare say that there'll probably be a bit more variety than just that lot in real life. Just thinking that considering Dovetail Games have made a Class 700 add-on for Train Simulator, why have they not done the same for TSW2? In other words, why the double standard? When, again, you've got the model of the 700, why not? Surely it wouldn't be too much of a job or too much effort to import or alter that model to make it suitable for TSW. Especially when you've got, from memory, I've seen that people have been wanting a Class 700 for pretty much ever since that London commuter route was released. For example, like there's a station route which is Hawley, and I think in real life it's Thameslink that primarily serves that station. It's about like maybe 1 or 2 southern services each day. But of course, given that there's no Class 700 in TSW, it looks rather silly, and especially when you're at Hawley and how there's, I think, just like one service in the current timetable that actually stops there, and it's like one southern service relatively late in the evening, which I tried driving once but couldn't get out of London Victoria because of that red signal glitch. Thank you, Dovetail, for your fantastic quality control and testing people, doing the job so well that you still get the occasional red signal glitch. Unacceptable. That's the other thing about that red signal glitch, is that it tends to be fairly inconsistent, and when it does happen, it does not make it. It is not desirable, to say the very least. Right. Yes, I remember now how much I don't really like this approach into Gravesend. If anything, all these going under all these bridges and later on into a sort of a cutting, it reminds me of the approach into Liverpool Lime Street, which is another station I don't particularly like. Well, saying that, I think no, that would have been on the Liverpool to Manchester route in Train Simulator. Speaking of Liverpool, of course, that's coming to TSW as part of that bizarre Spirit of Steam pack, which I've still got reservations over. I think if Dovetail were ever going to make a steam route, they should have done something that wasn't as obvious as the northwest of England in the late 1960s. Or in other words, anything that's not in the British Railways era. Hell, they could have done like a backdated version of this. It's like a backdated version of Gravesend to Faversham, where you could then see the original layout of this station here at Gravesend, and then see just how much it's changed. Because this used to be the same sort of layout as Newington, where you had the platforms on the outer loops and the sort of fast lines in the middle. And of course these days Gravesend just has been remodelled to have two through platforms right next to each other, and then this bay platform. And in real life, I'm pretty sure the North Kent line local services off of Charing Cross, they terminated this platform. And these days, I think that's generally the only time you'll see the Class 465s at Gravesend. But now that we're at our final station for this run. I thought I might as well, obviously, it ends the video here. And yes, I think it hasn't been too bad this run. Mind you, it's not like much could go wrong anyway, aside from me being sluggish with punctuality. But yes, I think until God, I'm not good with these, am I? But no, until the next video, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this look back at the Class 465 networker. Yeah, take care everyone, and I will see you next time. Also, what's that thing under the destination display? This extra boxy thing.